Hello and welcome to IMHO. Today I'm talking about a shift in video advertising metrics and what this means for video marketing and also SEOs with Greg Jarboe. Last week, Greg wrote an article for SEJ which covered insights from the 2024 IAB Digital Video Ads Spend and Strategy Report. From the second part of the report, which came out last week, what stood out was the shift in measurement metrics. To discuss this and to throw insight into why this is important and why Greg has been so shocked about these changes, I reached out to him for his thoughts. Now, as a bit of background, Greg actually started out as a director of corporate communications in the 90s at Ziff Davis when websites were called new media. He's worked with video marketing since the mid-2000s and has followed the development and uptake of video in online marketing and SEO since that time. So, Greg, first of all, please tell me, in your humble opinion, why are you shocked about this shift in video advertising metrics?
Well, Shelley, I'm not just shocked. I'm shocked. Sort of like Claude Rains was in Casablanca. It's like I've actually been following this trend for at least 15 years, if not longer. And it was one of those things like, how come nobody else sees this? And then all of a sudden, like magic, for the first time in this latest report, suddenly ad agencies and their clients seem to be acting rationally for the first time in 15 years. So what really was hanging things up in the United States, too many American brands and agencies are still hung up on the television era. And all the metrics that they were used were just fine, thank you very much, for measuring TV reach and frequency. Okay, so they may have layered in a little bit of engagement occasionally if they were sophisticated because they knew online video, you could like or share or comment on the video. Okay, fine. Maybe a little of that snuck in, but they were using what I would like to call marketing outputs to measure their success. And, a few of us pioneers were saying, no, focus on business outcomes. You can do that. And that, sort of advice wasn't being taken up very, very often. And suddenly a majority of brands and agencies are now using business outcomes to measure success. It's like, whoa, what happened? And I have to humbly, and this is where the humble part comes in. No, they didn't start taking my advice. What I think has happened, and this is a theory, so challenge it if you want. I think what happened is that a majority are now using the ability in, let's say, YouTube, to set your business goal as a way of shaping your video ad campaign. And among the selections that you have are awareness and consideration, or website traffic, or leads, or sales. And if you let artificial intelligence basically say, okay, if that's your goal, then here's where we want to display your video ad, then all of a sudden you are focusing on business outcomes. And it's not because you suddenly read an old article that I wrote or read my book from 2009, which is really outdated. It's you're letting AI give you the best practice. That again, I'm not the only one, but many of us who were advocating that a long time ago just weren't getting the audience to say, you can do that? How? So net, I'm shocked that people are doing the right thing finally, but I'm suspicious of they don't know that they're doing the right thing or why. It's just they're taking use of the new artificial intelligence capabilities that Google is rolling out.
It's interesting you touched there on the brand awareness. It's something that I had a chat with Maudie Oberstein last week about what SEOs need to know about branding and what SEOs need to know about branding. And tell me about this. Why do you think more people are now choosing the setting of brand awareness for video?
Well, this is another thing that's sort of flown under the radar. And I can't speak for your side of the pond, but let me tell you what's happening on my side of the pond. Um, Connected television, CTV, has basically swept aside linear TV, and more than half of the ad dollars have now moved to connected TV. And guess what? When you're advertising on connected TV, your goal is awareness or consideration. And so, again, it's one of those, this is another one of those sea changes that is probably as big as the advent of mobile advertising was, 20 years ago. And, or actually not 20, 15 or more years ago. But connected television is now shifting ad dollars, at least on this side of the pond. I suspect it doesn't have as big an effect in your country because of the BBC. It's just, which is not really ad driven. ITV is, but certainly not the Beeb. But nevertheless, what that means is a lot of advertisers, and that's both on the client side as well as the agency side, are now using AI to steer money that used to go on ITV in your side of the world to YouTube. And YouTube has huge reach in the UK as well as the US. And you know what? That's brand advertising.
What's interesting, just tapping into this, because I'm quite fascinated by what's going on with TikTok. TikTok is now so dominant, especially with emerging demographics such as Gen Z. So as they come through the ranks, video channels such as TikTok are only going to become more and more influential. So, how do you think we can start to embrace with everything that's happened with the shift in the measurement metrics? How do you think that applies to TikTok? How can we apply business outcomes to TikTok?
TikTok is interesting. Of course, it's facing a ban in the United States, so the UK may be the interesting laboratory to see what works and what doesn't, if and when the US shuts off the switch. But one of the things that TikTok shared this past year, and we wrote about it in Search Engine Journal, was some research that they had done on the buyer journey. And what they found was that it was a loop. It wasn't a straight line. And everyone knows that the customer journey is not a straight line. Life should be so simple. But it was a looping process. And part of the loop was discovery, or, I'm finding new things. And the other part of the loop, which not everyone focused on as much, was consideration. And again, there are way too many marketers who are still working with a metaphor called the sales funnel, which, if you actually dig into it, was invented in 1924, 100 years ago. Oh, by the way, the customer journey does not travel straight down a funnel. No, 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 no. This is not like filtered coffee. It's a loop-de-loop, okay? And so one of the things that SEOs, content marketers, your chief marketing officer, you pick it, needs to understand is the customer defines where we need to be found when they're in the discovery mode, and where we need to be found again when they're in evaluation mode, and whether it's not a straightforward process. And that means we need to create the kind of content that captures their interest. That's fine. That's the beginning of the process. But then builds a relationship with them over time until they say, that's a brand I want to do business with.
In your opinion, top tips, how do you think SEOs and content marketers can tap into that to be producing that kind of content?
This is hard. This is hard. They need to find their inner Yoda and unlearn what they have learned. And that's really hard for marketing professionals to do. It's like, what? But that's not the way it worked last year. And the answer is it's not last year anymore, is it? And one of the things that I've seen over the last 20 years is the really, really, really good agencies, brands, marketers, SEOs, you know, fill in the description, are the ones who are constantly adapting. And you know, it's like, wait, that wasn't on my CV when I got my last job. And the answer is, yeah, I know it wasn't on anybody's CV on the last job. But constantly learning to evolve is Darwinian at best, and we all need to begin mastering that. And so, yeah, one of the things that I had to learn the hard way when I was writing my book, you know, YouTube and video marketing, is first edition came out in 2009, second edition came out in 2011. I told my wife, no problem, dear, it's just an update. I'll put on a new afterword or something. It's, no biggie, right? 75% of the content had to be rewritten to be relevant. And I had to learn early in this process. It's changing a lot, and it changes constantly. And so if you get that, then you set yourself up to evolve along with the technology. And you decide, okay, now is the time to shift into this. And now is the time to shift into that. Now is the time to, stop doing those things that no longer work and start doing the new ones that I wasn't doing before. Let me give you one other piece of advice. And this comes from someone who writes books. Don't read books. The whole book publishing process is too slow. Any book that's out there that you're going to pick up is probably already out of date. And the book publishing industry just can't keep pace. So although that is a traditional way of keeping updated, scrap that one, stick to this is like the news industry. If you're going to follow the news, you don't want to read something that was written 18 months ago. You need information that's at least a day old and maybe a week old, but you know what, you need something fresh, and that's the magic, that's the trick, that's what you have to learn.
Well, I'm going to wrap up there because this is just a short little coffee-sized break. And it's been fascinating to speak to you, Greg, and thank you very much for your insights. And if anybody wants to get hold of you, where can they find you, Greg? Apart from being one of our great authors at SEJ, where else can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. I used to be on Twitter, which is I know now called X, but it turns out I shared an article written by Reuters about how advertisers were leaving Twitter, and somehow or other that was considered hate speech, that my sharing that article, and I got banned from X. Don't reach me there anymore. Or go to my website, seo-pr.com.
Okay, brilliant. Well, it's been great to speak to you, Greg. Thank you very much for offering your humble opinion.